Oh, good, great to hear. Well, mate, I think we'll kick into it from
Yeah.
here. So thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, we're super excited to have you here today to dive into all things personal branding with the one and only Dickie Currer. Just a couple of things before we jump into it. So this is going to be recorded. There is a messenger chat. So any questions that you have throughout, just pop them in there. We'll go over them by the end, and if we don't manage to get through all of them, I'll answer them in an email after. But Dickie, thanks very much for joining us. How you doing, mate?
Oh,
You
mate,
well?
my pleasure. So good to chat as always.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. But look, for those of you who don't know, Dickie is head of ecosystems at Scalare Partners and national leader at Tech Australia Advocates, otherwise known as the hype man of the Australian tech and innovation ecosystem. I think it's fair to say you do a lot for the startup industry here, which is awesome to see. Creating that massive support network, but then off the back of that, you've got your own personal brand, which you push it all through. So pumped to have you here today and pick your brains about it. But mate, it would be great to hear just a little bit about your background and the roles that you're doing at the moment. I know I just covered them off, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Well, you did a pretty good start for me in terms of what I'm doing at the moment. I guess you probably, for those who don't know me, you can probably tell that, like Otto, I'm from the UK originally. So I moved to Australia 9 years ago. It was actually 9 years on Sunday. So I just had my anniversary. When I was in the UK, I used to be an immigration and asylum lawyer for my sins, and then I was also trained to be an officer in the British Army. Moved to Australia, starting from scratch, no friends and family, without a network. All I'd done in the past was a little bit of sales roles here and there. Jumped straight into working as the first hire for a startup, which was in the food tech industry, trying to basically take commercial kitchen space and sell it to people who could deliver out of that space. We were working with Deliveroo. This is like pre Uber Eats, right?
Yeah,
It's pre dark kitchens, cloud kitchens. So I was literally like the first hire without equity. I guess like the co-founder with equity, as the joke goes.
yeah,
Incredible experience, and then sort of the back of that, just found myself in partnerships roles, really focusing on B2B to C sales, and really starting to build that huge network, and really, I guess, doubling down on how important a network was, which is something I never really kind of, I guess, focused on too much when I was in the UK in the early stage of my career. And then into the startup ecosystem properly, sort of 2.5 years ago now, working for the Startup Network, which was called Startup Victoria in Melbourne. That was when I really understood kind of the power of a personal brand, right? And how
yeah,
much of an impact that can have. And last year was really about saying yes to every opportunity that came up, whether that was, speaking gigs, content creation, jumping on podcasts, interviews, workshops, mentoring. I kind of called the year of yes. And it was an incredible experience to be able to, I guess, supercharge kind of what my personal brand was and to really learn about it through experimentation. And it got me
yeah,
the role at Scalare Partners now. And obviously it led to me launching my own community, launching my own podcast recently as well with a group called the Growth Cartel. And I've got my own sort of content arms, which are LinkedIn, newsletter, all those various
yeah,
things. So, like you say, really busy, but it's
yeah,
all really about supporting the growth of the tech and innovation ecosystem, and then also just, I guess, leading through vulnerability and positivity as well, and being able to actually, I guess, educate people in how to also, build this network out and build
yeah.
their own community and tribe of people.
Yeah, yeah, awesome, mate. I love it. You wear a lot of hats, and yeah, juggle it all really well. But I guess that's why it's so great to chat to you today, because obviously what Hyper do with founders right at the early stage, all the way through to launch and then beyond. There's a lot of correlation there.
Yeah.
And we always say, it takes a village to build a startup. So the more connections, the more people you can meet, introductions here and there, is what it's all about. So with that being said,
Definitely.
in terms of personal branding, I'd love to know like what it sort of means to you and what you think the benefits are.
Mate, it's who I am ultimately. I read something. I think it was Rosie Chong, who's an incredible LinkedIn influencer, posted recently, and I've kind of been thinking about it for the last couple of weeks, which is we all have a personal brand. It's whether we choose to actually lean into it or not. So for me, it's not something that, you know, anyone who's on this workshop today thinking, I'm going to learn how to build a personal brand and tomorrow I'm going to start building it. You've been building it for your entire life. That's just what it is, right? It's who you are. I guess when it becomes personal branding, which is a very loaded term, is when you actually start to decide to acknowledge that, develop it, and then sort of commercialize it. And become really conscious of it, right? Of what it actually is. So for me, it's just, I guess, an amplified version of who I am anyway, every day. I just make sure that now I kind of, like I say, develop it and then find a way to use it to my advantage. So it's been instrumental for me in the growth of my career over the last couple of years, whether that be through my most recent roles that I've taken on board. I think, you know, I've been able to leverage those enormously, and my position and influence in the industry. You know, I shape that and leverage that through the personal brand that I've built.
Yeah, awesome, nice, I love it. And it sort of ties into the next one, sort of how to build it. You know, you've obviously been doing it for a while now, but you know, similar to what we do with our founders, you know, talking about a specific niche and then building upon that and going from there? Or is it really just about putting yourself out there, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and crafting your story that way?
Like I say, we've all got one already, right? It's like, I think it's experimentation. So for me, at least, it was really about understanding who I was first. And I mean, this is also, you know, I guess the caveat of this, I wouldn't say I'm no expert. I've had, you know, a great experience. I've had some success. I'm also a pretty hard critic of myself, which is like a lot of founders and entrepreneurs, right? Who have that kind of growth mindset, the constant evolution. And I think, like I was saying to you earlier, actually, I saw Otto this morning on the Bondi promenade, having our little morning coffee and walk. And I was actually on a coffee with Tom Alder, who used to work at Atlassian, who's this, you know, full-time content creator now. He's got a newsletter. He's got a following of 85,000 people. And I guess, like, for me, it's really important about, you know, aiming up and finding peers that you can aim up and grow with. And so I was totally learning from him this morning about kind of the hacks to go bigger. But so that's the caveat, I guess, where I'm at. But for me, it was really about finding out who I was. And that journey is continuing every single day. But I did that through a lot of psychometric tests, a lot of experimentation. I always say to people, if you want to discover your core brand tenets to start with, go and talk to 20, 30, 40 people that you know across all subsections of your life, whether that be, you know, people at work, people in your network, friends, family. Ask them to describe you in 3 words. And then correlate all that data and then find the trends. And that's your personal brand. Right. And then it's about going, how do I take, you know, whether it's a great one of mine would be vulnerability. Right. So people always, I post a lot of content around about like my upbringing, the things I'm thinking, how to, like, I guess, lead with emotion, how to, the challenges that I'm facing in my life at the moment. That was one of the core things that came around in terms of my content arms. It was then about, you know, going deeper on those, being consistent in how you talk about them, and then also like developing that side of my brand by 25%. That's literally for me what leveraging a personal brand is, right? And so it's something I'm always thinking of every day is like, how do I become more vulnerable again? And how do I, you know, amplify that part of my character? And I think that resonates with founders because, you know, we're always trying to squeeze that extra 10, 20% out, right? Everything that we do. And that's just all the personal branding is. It's about finding your core brand tenets and then going deeper on them and growing them and improving them.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. No, that's great. And I guess, it makes sense. Like, but hearing you say that, it's like the first time I've sort of thought of it like that. But I guess in terms of like founders launching tech businesses, things like that, that early phase that you're talking about, going to find those 30 people and speak to them and ask them, you know, what are the three things in terms of, for a startup founder, that's like that initial validation phase, asking the questions to what they're doing, you know, should I be doing this? What do you like about it? What do you not? And then from there, you can really craft it and be like, okay, well, this is the angle I should probably go for, or I'm going to try to start. So
exactly that. Building a personal brand is literally building a product, right? Like, it's exactly the same process that you go through, like finding product market fit, experimentation, you know, like you say, like going out and having that initial feedback loop from customers. Like it's the same thing.
Yeah. 100%. And then in terms of content strategy, so you've got a podcast, you've got a newsletter, you've got your LinkedIn, you've got your various, jobs and titles that you're working for. What do you prefer the most? What do you think works the best for you at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn's kind of like the number one. I feel like that's where I put a lot of my effort into, and that's probably my one to many channel. I guess that's to the point of the commercialization of your personal brand. It's the best platform to do it, to build your community and your tribe. I sit down on a weekend. So I sit down at the start of the month and put together a calendar. It's currently on a spreadsheet, although like after meeting Tom this morning, I've got so many new tech tools to use to help grow that. But I literally will spreadsheet out the month and then ring like the obvious events. Like say like a great example will be I spoke at an event last Wednesday. So I was like Thursday morning, is going to be a post about that event. But I'll basically put together a calendar for the month of what content I'm going to talk about. And then on a Sunday, I'll sit down for an hour and literally back to back write all the week's content. So it's good to go.
Yeah.
People always say to me, how do you have time for this? And I'm like, I literally set aside an hour on a weekend because it's so important for me to do that. And then, it's a case of waking up in the morning and it takes 5 minutes to put your post up, add the, photo emojis, obviously, and then just get it out to the audience. Outside of that, I'm building out newsletters at the minute. I think that's huge when it comes to actually ring fencing your community. So actually putting some guardrails on it and being able to, it's easy to commercialize a newsletter. And then for me, it's just really about exposure. All right. So I started a podcast with a couple of guys late last year, very early days, but we're about to relaunch now with a group of 5 of us. It's called the Growth Cartel. And it's growth strategies and I guess just startup conversations. And we've picked 5 people that have got extremely diverse backgrounds. And it's going to be a community pod where we have different hosts that roll around. And that for me is really about just getting giving myself a platform to talk about the things that I care about. So numerous touch points. I would say, for anyone listening that wants advice to pick kind of your core channels, it can be very easy to get cut across too many. Also pick the things that you enjoy doing the most, like writing content for me I love sort of speaking on stage, like MCing, those sort of gigs are my favorite things. They give me energy, and that's going to be easier for you when you build your personal brand, right? Like I've just launched a recent newsletter, and even though I love writing, it's kind of killing me because the formatting is really painful, and I don't have that kind of brain. I like just if something takes over like longer than like 10 minutes, I lose like all patience. So I'm starting to realize maybe long-term like newsletter content creation isn't one of my long-term channels, or unless I can outsource it, which obviously is something I'll be looking at in the future. But it's really about looking at what you love doing and what resonates with the audience you've got as well, right?
100%. I suppose, you gotta love doing it. Otherwise, the moment it turns into a bit of a chore, you're just going to be less motivated. But interesting to hear about like how you stay consistent and how you manage it all. So you sit down once a week on a Sunday and you plan it all out your calendar, or once before the month and plan it all out, write it all, and then you kind of just have it. So then, you'll do sort of, spontaneous posts in between then if you have them. Otherwise, you got it planned and, there's structure to it.
Yeah, or it's like, if a piece of content comes into my head around like something that I, it can be any time of day, just pops in there and I think, I'd love to write about that. I'll just write it straight away. If I've got the time, I'll sit down, I'm going to write it now rather than like forgetting about it or, or pushing it down the line and not getting it done, like, or it never happening. I'll try to, so I've got like a Google Docs, which has got like 20 LinkedIn posts pre-written on there that some of them I'm going to post like, a month or two's time. Some, it might be next week, but there's always content. Because I found that if you're waking, it's such an effort sometimes to think about what to do, right? And that's one of the huge barriers to actually creating content, I think. So
Yeah.
I found that's been really effective for me recently.
Yeah, awesome. No, that's it's good to hear. It's good insight. So I feel like a lot of people who don't have a personal brand and they're looking to start one, it would be pretty overwhelming. It's like, well, where do I start? Yes, I need to post, but what do I post? Where do I post? So if you actually break it down, sit down, just get a calendar, devote it to the personal brand and you post, just pick LinkedIn or pick a podcast or pick a newsletter and just start with that, then it's a momentum game and I suppose just grows from there.
Mate, I would say in terms of starting, just start thinking about your personal, be conscious of it, right? Like I said, everyone's got one anyway, right? It's not, we're not building something that already exists. Like take that into meetings. It's like, it's how you act in every scenario that you exist with. Like it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to have a platform, you know, it doesn't have to be content creation. It's literally just how you interact with people day to day. That's defined by what your personal brand is. And guess what? If you're conscious of it and you decide to train it, like anything in life, you'll be better at it than if you don't and you just go about your day to day without, you know, realizing that every single interaction you have impacts, you know, with everyone else. So I think that's my biggest advice is just start thinking about how you act day to day. And that is what your personal brand is.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, all a momentum game. And it's interesting you say that as well, because so Sam sat down with Andrew Gazetsky last month, and he's obviously got a personal brand as well. And he was saying, Sam's asked him about it, and he was like, okay, well, I want you to go back for the last 4 years, and I want you to find a single day that I didn't post. Go on Christmas, go on my birthday. He's like, you won't. I post every day. And obviously, you know, that over time, you know, has massive benefits, which is awesome.
Yeah, 100%, mate.
Yeah, perfect. So, and as well, I saw from a post that you did the other day, your focuses for 2024, which I really liked. Just, you know, stepping outside of imposter syndrome, owning the fact that you've got a personal brand and that, you know, you're pushing it actively, and then obviously sharing the things that you've learned from doing it. I guess with all that being said, like through like the consistency, when did you find that your personal brand picked up the most? Was it recently? Was it last year, year before?
Yeah, probably. I mean, last year was just sort of transformational in my life, I guess, in terms of, you know, understanding. Like I was hosting loads of events. So I don't know if you saw this, but last year I used to be terrified of public speaking, right? Like as a kid, I literally would like practice how to say to buy a bus ticket when I was waiting for the bus, and like I spoke way too quick, and so like I just splurge words. And so, you know, through university, through my career in the army, I would just skip every opportunity it was to speak publicly. You know, honestly, ridiculous. And so I started doing a bit of public speaking in 2022. And I was like, quite enjoy this actually. Like I'm quite good at it all of a sudden, and I want more. And so last year I set myself a challenge of trying to do 50 speaking gigs across the year. I did 72 in the end, and I think I had to miss about 20 due to travel and clashes and that sort of stuff. And I guess that's through that whole process, you know, beating that fear, and then also having that huge experience, constantly being like exposed to huge rooms of people. That's when I started to realize last year there was probably an inflection point. I couldn't, you know, I don't think it was one moment. It's very much progressive, where I started to realize that I was building a distinct brand. And then it's like, you know, you get people reaching out to you about being an influencer on their platform, or actually, you know, helping them to promote an event, and here's a free ticket, and all these kind of things start coming across, and you think, oh, wait a second, like all of a sudden people value the influence I have. And then this year's really been about sort of, I think, you know, we all have imposter syndrome, right? I don't know about you, Adam, but like I have it every day. Like it's in everything I do. I've been talking recently about the fact that it's another level of imposter syndrome when you're stepping into like personal development conversations. You know, so when you're saying to someone, here's how you build a personal brand like me, it's like, holy shit, that's another level of imposter syndrome. Because, you know, who am I? So this year's been really trying to like, just to kind of normalize that in a way, and just, you know, so surrounding myself with people all the time who understand it. Like I say, this chat with Tom this morning and what he's built, and just normalizing that exists. Because that's
100%.
it's really challenging. It's really challenging to kind of get into, but I think it's one of those things, like, to answer your question, it just kind of sneaks up on you and you start to realize there's little moments where you go, okay, like I recently got my first like paid brand influencing gig. I won't say who it is, but if you follow me on LinkedIn, you might be able to work it out. But that was a moment where I was like, okay, this is definitely something I'm not used to. And then, you know, the first couple of posts, I was really kind of, I felt like I had like deep imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and then I'm
Definitely.
like, did a couple of those, and I'm like, I want to do more of this. This is awesome. Like, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I remember on the public speaking, I remember the event you did last year where we saw each other, the Startup
Yeah.
Network in Sydney. That was awesome. That was great. And yeah,
Oh,
like that was probably towards the latter end of the year. And like you just completely owned the stage. And then yeah, in terms of the imposter syndrome, I guess for like lots of the people who will be on now, lots of the people who will watch this in the future, like as well with launching your own startup, it can be so overwhelming, but it's just like step by step. It's like, yeah, cool, I want to launch this business. And then actually sit back and think about it and look at all these big tech businesses out there and then see them where they're at and then compare themselves to where these businesses are. And it's like, well, how am I going to get there? And it's like, well, you'll only get there or only start to get there if you just put one foot in front of the other. It's all a momentum game. You can't do it all at once. You can't put 24 hours a day. And it's just, you know, commit that half an hour to start a day or a week. And that's better than not doing anything. And then all of a sudden it will turn into an hour once you really understand, you know, what you're doing and you get more passion for it, more drive, and it just builds over and over time. And then, you know, you can end up anywhere.
dude, 100%. Like, you can't compare other people. Like, you're all running your own race, and you've all got different barriers. You know, like, it's like, I'd say, like, building a startup or building a personal brand, it's the same thing. Is like running the hurdles, right? You know, like, and people have different things they got to jump, and different pace, and you know, there's so many different things that's stopping you from doing it. But like you say, like, just getting started firstly is just incredible. And you have to kind of just understand the wins, right? I feel like I try really hard, like every couple of weeks to, or, you know, sometimes if I'm having a day where I feel a bit overwhelmed with the imposter syndrome, I'll kind of, or like I'm not making enough impact in what I'm doing every day, I'll sit down and work out what the big day have been. And I'm like, let's reflect on that. And then doing that like maybe once a week or once a month in terms of what you've achieved in that week or in that month or in that year. And turns out, like, when you're building out your content arcs, it's an incredible way to reflect, right? So I do a lot of reflective posts about, like I say, last year I did a huge post around, here was my journey from 0 speaking gigs to 72, right? And that was ended up like getting shared by the LinkedIn editorial team to like 1.2 million people. And I started doing like public speaking, sort of like workshops, people who were just terrified of doing it. And then guess what? You're building out incredible content, which is building your personal brand, but at the same time, it's giving you a chance to reflect on the wins that you've had, so you can actually sit there and talk about it. And so, like, it's this awesome flywheel of like validation, which kind of helps to beat imposter syndrome. I think it's really important. And one of the I think the greatest part of my job is that it's incredibly reflective. And I think for any founder or entrepreneur, that's what the journey should be, right? Like, because you are in this silo, you're building, you're constantly asking why, like all these things that we talk about, it needs to be an incredibly reflective experience, and you should be able to get the best from that and really enhance what you're doing.
100%. You got to celebrate the little wins. I think reflection is so good because it's so good to get. It's so easy to get caught up, and you see all these massive raises, all this stuff going on. You know, like, oh well, I closed a partnership meeting, but you know, I haven't raised any money yet. It's like, no, that's actually huge. That's great. Like, celebrate it and then keep the momentum going. I guess a quote just from when you were speaking, then a quote that comes to mind, which I always try and think about when I'm trying to reflect on where I'm at, because I deal with this stuff as well. It's, you're living so many dreams you once had, and every now and again I should remind myself of it. Then I think about it, and then it kind of sits in, and then I'm like, okay, you know what, this is like really good, and it's just
that's such a good quote, mate. I'm totally gonna steal that. And give you the cred for it. But that's exactly it. Like, I always think the moment that something become normal, something that you know, an ambition you had or a dream that you had, and now it's normal, that's when you know you've made it in that thing, right? Like, it's like, now, I remember, like, as a kid, I grew up without like a dad, and like single mom, working class, didn't have access to watching live sport, and that was like my dream as a kid. Like, I just wanted to go watch the Premier League and, like, you know, be go into like football stadiums, and And then I remember moving to Melbourne like 7, 8 years ago, and like I was at the MCG like every week. Like I was working there. I was like corporate boxes, and I had this moment of reflection. I was like, this has become so normal to me now. But it's something as a
Yeah.
kid that I would have like given my right arm for. That
Yeah.
experience. And it's like it's so important to remember those moments, and like you say, like look back on the journey you've been through.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%, mate. Yeah. Awesome. Mate, I just wanted to ask one more thing. So I know we've obviously spoke about the sort of the content channels that you like, but in terms of like sort of Instagram, TikTok, for someone like promoting their personal brand or their startup, have you got any thoughts around those? Because they're obviously very big platforms.
I think it's got to be relevant, right? I think it's got to what
Yeah.
you're doing has to be relevant.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a bit of a lurker on both of those platforms. So like
Yeah.
I don't produce content, but I kind of watch, and especially TikTok, probably more so. I just find it
Yeah.
fascinating, all the different trends
Yeah.
that are on there. But I think it has to be
Yeah.
relevant. If you've got like a physical product business, I think that sort of stuff is incredible. Maybe not as relevant for tech. But again, it's like having different channels for different purposes, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the important thing, is to understand what the purpose is you're trying to achieve for the platform that you're on. Like I think Insta and TikTok probably going to be better for customers, whereas you're probably going to be better for partners, B2B, investors. LinkedIn's obviously a much better channel.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Perfect. I love it. And I guess just one last thing, mate. So in terms of what we do here at Hype, you've got founders launching tech businesses. For a founder who doesn't have one yet, even though everyone does have a personal brand, as we were talking about earlier, or hasn't, actively launched or started pushing it out yet, what's one top tip that you would leave them with today in terms of what they need to do next to push it out there?
Yeah, I'd say literally start like I said, do that exercise I talked about earlier. For those who missed it, going out to your network of 20, 30 people across a subsection and working out what your core brand tenants are, tying that back to your business and what you want to achieve from your business. I always say the best founders and entrepreneurs are the ones that their business is their why, right? They embody it every day. Like I'll give you a great example would be Paz Pazarski, the founder of Community Collective. And if you know her, but great friend of mine, she runs a community, resource platform to teach community managers. She embodies community every single day, and everything she talks about is community. She is her why. Like, so tie in those core brand tenants that you have that you've discovered into what your why is, and then just start going out there and putting that out into the universe. Like I will literally, every single person I meet, if they don't use LinkedIn, I will tell them to start posting at least 3 times a week tomorrow, or yesterday, sorry. In terms of just get doing it, get it out there, get experimenting, get seeing what works, A/B test. But it's about taking that plunge and just forgetting about the imposter syndrome and just going, this is going to be hugely beneficial for me. It doesn't take a lot of my time. Like in terms of raising the profile of you, your business, finding customers, finding investors, it's an incredibly impactful tool.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, it gives you that extra channel alongside the business. I'm definitely going to go back and do that exercise that you've just mentioned. And I'm going to re-listen to this as well, because there's definitely been some really key things that I've learned today. I'm sure everyone else can say the same. But mate, really, really appreciate your time and your insights. When your podcast comes out, send it through. Everyone will listen to it. We'll all be in Apollo. But mate, really appreciate it. And thank you very much.
No, thank you, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining as well.